What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Hart. For those of you that are new, and today we have a 5-game NBA slate here for Tuesday night on DraftKings. I'll be talking through my favorite plays, who I like, who I don't like, doing an early look slate breakdown, game by game, early look player pool, all the good stuff in this video. Make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. You guys already know what to do, and let's get right into this video. So recapping my night, I played Darius Garland. If you guys have been watching my videos or follow me on Twitter, that man has me in absolute shambles, and nothing changes. Nothing is new. Did it again today. He was 1 of 7 at halftime. Yeah, just absolutely ruined my night there. And then I played Porzingis. He had 8 points, 5 rebounds in the first 6 minutes of the game, and he did not return. He got pulled, just didn't return. There's been no updates on why. I mean, I think Garland's 14% owned in the 100K to first, and Porzingis is 10% owned. So these guys have really no ownership for, they should be double the ownership of what they're coming in at. They didn't. Just can't get rewarded. So yeah, I'm not going to complain here. Just going to move on. It's just extremely frustrating stuff, as you guys know. But moving on to Houston here versus Washington. Houston obviously looks really, really good here. Washington is so injured right now, and they're just god awful overall. So a lot to like here on the Houston side here. Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green going to lead this offense. Both are still, I'd say a little bit underpriced for just their ceiling, how many minutes they're seeing, how much usage they have. So they both look like really, really good and strong plays, and a fantastic matchup. Jabari Smith Jr. is going to be more so your kind of contrarian GPP option. He's been carrying a little bit of ownership, but I mean, the price is kind of keeping it down a little bit, and the minutes have not been the best. One of those guys who is foul prone at times, which does lose minutes because of that. And he's just not shooting the ball a ton. Like you'd expect him to kind of take that next level, that next step up. Really hasn't. I mean, it's not like he's doing terrible. I mean, he's doing solid, but you really want to see a little bit more from him. Consistent double doubles. Haven't really seen that yet. So more so just a solid contrarian option in this matchup. If you don't want to get to Green or VanVleet, Jabari Smith Jr. is a really, really strong option. And then Amen Thompson here. Another one of those guys, very boomer bust, as you can see kind of from his box score, 23 minutes. Only 15 and a half, and then obviously 46, and then 29. So, it's a mixed bag of what you're going to get with him. I think he's fairly priced. Good matchup. Game blows out. I would assume he still sees solid minutes, but it's a little bit risky. In terms of the other plays here, Dylan Brooks, if you want pain, you can play him. I'm not going to go there. And then Jock Landale is kind of the only other one I have interest in at 4.4K. Seeing mid-teens minutes as well as, into the 20s, depending on if there's foul trouble for a guy like Jabari Smith Jr. Moving on to Washington here, as I said, they're super injury depleted right now. Kuzma's questionable. If he's good to go, obviously Poole and Kuzma look like really, really strong plays, because if this game stays close, they're going to need both of them. It'd be interesting to see what happens, if Poole starts alongside Kuzma or if they bring him off the bench. Obviously, starting alongside Kuzma, he's been terrible this year. Off the bench, he's been really, really good. So that's a little bit of a wrinkle there, just because, what are we going to get with him in terms of that, him starting or him not starting? But obviously, if Kuzma is out, then we're going to want to load up on a guy like Poole if you think this game stays close. Otherwise, if you don't, I still think Kispert, you can put it in the same bucket as Poole, as where if you think this game stays close, these two are going to be your best options in terms of offense and have really, really strong games. If you think it's going to blow out, your best options are going to get to Champagne here, Baldwin Jr., and Butler. Those three are going to be your best plays. All three of them saw really, really strong minutes here in that last game when it turned into a blowout there, kind of into the second half against Boston. But all three of them, as you can see, saw really, really strong minutes. So all three would probably be my favorite options here on the cheaper side. Johnny Davis is fine. He also saw pretty strong minutes there, but I'd rather just stick with the other three. Johnny Davis is still option. And then Jules Bernard, as you can see, was pretty aggressive as well off the bench. So good amount to like here for these cheap guys on Washington. I think the best ones are probably Baldwin Jr. and Champagne here, however you pronounce his last name. And then I'd lean towards just kind of the ranking here: Champagne, Baldwin Jr., Butler, Davis, and Bernard. But yeah, a good amount to like there in the Washington game. Moving on to Charlotte here versus Orlando with the Charlotte side. We know where the offense is going to come from. It's going to be coming from Bridges and Miller. Now, Man and Mitric have kind of been trading off in terms of like good games here. Mitric is kind of cooling off a little bit, but still seeing about 30 minutes a game. Man had a really strong game there. Almost a 50 bomb there. was a little bit more aggressive than usual. Usually he's kind of been floating on that 10 shot attempts per game mark. So I say pump the brakes a little bit. But at 6,200, I think it's a fine play, seeing these minutes. But it's just not the best matchup here to get to anyone on the Charlotte side. Going against Orlando, they play slow and they're really, really good defensively. So it's just not a good matchup. These guys are more secondary options. If you want to get to Bridges Miller, sure you can. I think it'd be kind of forced to get to man Richards or Micic. They're there, but not much interest in this team for me. If you're looking for an absolute dart throw, if you think this game gets ugly, Poku could be your guy there at 3.7, seeing fine minutes. But yeah, not a lot to like here in this matchup. But obviously for the Orlando side, it's a different story. Obviously, if this game blows out, it's going to be coming, I would say, probably because of Franz or Paolo. Could be, a balanced game. Who knows? But obviously, these two are going to be your best options. They both look really, really good here in this matchup. Rest of the team, just secondary options. They're just more filler plays if you land on them, like a guy like Jonathan Isaac. He's been productive recently. Minutes are slowly going up there. But otherwise, yeah, I just really stick with Franz, really stick with Paolo. They're running the offense. They're getting all the usage. Paolo's been absolutely fantastic. And then if you want to get a little bit riskier, you can definitely land on one of the guards, like a Suggs, like a Fultz. But I'd say Isaac is probably the only other one I want to get to if I'm not getting to one of the main two guys. Moving on to the Pelicans here. Zion's kind of been leading them in terms of just how well he's been playing recently. So if you want to ride the hot streak there with him, you can. I don't mind it. He's just priced about right. So I don't think there's a need to get to him or Ingram or CJ, even though they're coming in at fine price tags. J-Val's just losing a ton of minutes here. So it's really, really hard to get to him with any sort of trust. And it's not like they're, blasting Larry Nance Jr. with a ton of minutes. He has, 3 of the past 4, he's gone for 25 or more. But, there is that risk they could definitely go small. Go to a guy like Najee Marshall here, who's been seeing some solid minutes. There's a decent value, 3.9. Hawkins' minutes have kind of ticked down, not really playing a ton. Alvarado's has kind of picked up, as you can see here. Obviously, some blowouts, so he's playing more. But, yeah, there's some decent value options here for the Pelicans side in terms of Najee Marshall, Alvarado, and Nance. And then if you want to pay up for someone, Zion's going to be the safest. And then in terms if you're deciding between Ingram and CJ, I'd go with Ingram. It just has a little bit of higher of a ceiling there. CJ is going to be the safer play compared to Ingram, but Ingram definitely has a higher ceiling. Moving on to Brooklyn here. Brooklyn side, really like the price tag on Cam Thomas. I put him last slate against the Spurs, went for almost a 50 bomb there. I mean, he's just going to shoot the ball 15 to 20 times a game, if not more. It is 7.2, feels pricey, but I mean, he's going to chuck the ball. So really hard not to like him in any sort of matchup. I mean, I expect him to get 35 minutes, 15 shot attempts a game for the rest of the season. So if his price doesn't move, I do think it's too cheap. Mikal Bridges here is going to be kind of the more boom or bust play compared to Cam Thomas. He's just been god-awful. Really, really fallen off a cliff here in terms of just his media coverage, how well he's been playing. It just has not been good for him in this team here. I think it's a fine secondary option. We know the upside there with him. So if you could get him at super low ownership here tomorrow. But the Nets have been terrible, and Pelicans have been really good. Definitely some blowout risk here. But if it stays close, it's going to be because of these 3 main guys, Claxton, Bridges, and Cam Thomas. But I rank them in Cam Thomas, Bridges, Claxton in that order. I don't mind Schroeder. Another one of those guys playing good minutes. Been a little bit more aggressive recently. Kind of been floating around that 33, 34 fantasy point per game mark. So at 6.3, I think it's a fine play. Kind of like an Ayo DeSumo play. Cam Johnson coming off the bench, seeing mid-20s minutes. Scoring dependent, so at 5.4. Not a ton of interest for me there. And that's really it. Could take a shot on Lonnie Walker if he gets hot. He could extend it, but it's just a very, very gross team in terms of Brooklyn and just what they're doing and how they're playing so far. Moving on to Dallas here. Obviously, the big news is Luka. I would assume he's good to go. He played the entire game against Denver. So we'll have to wait and see here. But yeah, I would think he's fine. And with that in mind, I mean, sure, there's going to be a ton of value options, some cheap value options. So you can definitely get up and pay up for Luka. But it's definitely risky because I do think there's a good amount of, mid-tier, second-tier plays that you can get to that have enough upside to make it where you don't need to play Luka. But that's kind of the route Evan's been going on these slates is Evan's just jamming in Luka and going to the values. And it's been working because Luka's been pretty much going off for a triple-double. I think it's like 35, 10 and 10, 12 and 10 since the All-Star break. So, I mean, it's been worth it. He's been going for like 75 fantasy points. But there's always that risk. He has an average Luka game and only goes for like 60, which obviously wouldn't make it worth it at 12.5K. That's kind of the dilemma there. Kyrie's obviously the pivot play, contrarian option. I mean, we know he has upside there alongside Luka, but with both of them in terms of the offense, really no interest in anyone else here on this team. Maybe you could take a shot on one of the centers in the Lively or Gafford. It's just risky there. Moving on to the Spurs, obviously Victor and Vassell are going to be leading this team. The only two guys I have interest in. Everyone else, more secondary options. Sure, filler plays if you want to land on them. I don't think there's a need. I'd rather get to the guys in Washington, the guys on, Brooklyn, guys on, even on Dallas. I'd rather take shots on them than instead of these, Spurs guys. Everything is just going through Vassell and Wemby. I don't know why it says, Vassell played 85 minutes there. That's crazy. I'm not really sure why it says that for Vassell, but obviously the two guys you want to load up on are going to be Vassell and Wemby there. And then moving on to this last game here, as you can see, just kind of a gross slate in terms of just the games overall. Denver versus Minnesota. Denver side, Jokic, Murray, Porter, Aaron Gordon, and KCP are the only people you should have interest in. With more so, it just really just being Jokic and Murray. MPJ is always that fine tournament option. We know there's an upside is there. It's just, you never feel great playing him, especially at that price tag close to 7K. I pumped the brakes a little bit. I still think Jamal Murray is just way too cheap here. And if people are going to go to if they're going to go to Luka, I'd rather go to Jokic. Whoever has a lower ownership of the two is kind of who I prefer. Even if they're kind of similar or close, I still prefer going to Jokic. Just a little bit cheaper. And I just think it's a little bit, I was going to say better matchup. It's not a bad matchup, but Dallas has a fantastic matchup there. I just feel a little bit better going to Jokic because I would assume he's going to be lower ownership because that's kind of how it's been so far this season in terms of both of them on the same slate. I think the third favorite would be KCP. He's just seen strong minutes. Obviously, we know the ceiling is not too high, but at 4.2K, that's a very strong value. A guy who's going to see close to 30 minutes in a close game, has the ability to go for 20, 25 plus. I think it's definitely a strong value option there, just in terms of the minutes and his upside if he does hit some shots. For Minnesota here, the big news right now is Gobert. He is out for tonight, so they're playing on a back-to-back. Obviously, that kind of factors into potential blowout risk for this game tomorrow, just because getting some tired legs. But Denver has to travel to them, so maybe that helps a little bit there. But Anthony Edwards is going to be, obviously a very safe play here, seeing close to 40 minutes a game in close games. Going to be shooting the ball 20 plus times, as you can see here. 35, 27, 23, 29, 20. The dude's just letting it fly. So obviously a very, very safe play here. I would expect Gobert to be back. They held him out of the game tonight. I do think they're just trying to save him for the back-to-back. Have him play against, Towns, have him play against Jokic tomorrow. So with that in mind, at 7.6, I do think he's a strong play just because another one of those guys is going to see close to 40 minutes. Obviously, he's not heavily involved offensively. Does make his own shots, but as you can see, he still has strong upside just in terms of his rebounding ability and the lob threat that he is. So I still think he's solid there. Obviously, some foul trouble risk there. Jokic can definitely pull him away from the basket. So a little bit of risk there, but I still think he's a strong play. And then I like Miles Reed. He's priced all the way up to 7.5, but even if he comes off the bench there with if Gobert starts and they move him to the bench, he should still see 30 plus minutes, and he's going to be super aggressive there off the bench. Kind of the scorer off the bench there. So a lot of interest in all three of those guys. I think Conley is a strong secondary option. His aggressiveness is kind of, fluctuating every single game. The minutes have not been the best, but still, he definitely has an upside there. NAW coming off the bench, seeing some solid minutes. I don't expect him to be too aggressive there. In terms of value, not much here I like. It's really just kind of sticking with the main two guys here, Gobert, Edwards. Good amount of interest in Reed, and then possibly taking a shot in Conley. So that's the early look slate breakdown. Obviously, a good amount of news to wait on. Luka, Kuzma, which really kind of changes how we want to attack the slate in terms of value with that Washington side there. Maybe some of these Washington guys get ruled in. Maybe some of these, Minnesota guys get ruled out. Who knows? It's going to be an interesting slate. Just 5 pretty disgusting games until, maybe that last one's fine. Hopefully Dallas and, the Spurs is interesting. But yeah, right now I think you want to build around Jamal Murray, Victor, and then kind of go from there in terms of the value. A lot of people are going to go to this Washington side, especially if there's no Kuzma. So it's more so, as I said, the earliest look slate breakdown, endless possibilities with what happens with this slate. So as always, make sure to stay updated with the injury news. I'll have my core plays updated on my Patreon link down below. And I think I might do, some core plays on Twitter as well for you guys. Some early look core plays, maybe even a full core play breakdown for you guys. Make sure to hit that like button, subscribe, check out to my Twitter link down below. I'll see you guys next video. Peace.